Peter.
I'd like to thank the chairperson for that informative introduction. So joke. My name is Peter. I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Hey, Peter.
Grateful to be alive and sober and part of a sacred place called Alcoholics Anonymous. And thank the group for having me here to share with you my experience, strength, and hope. Paul for being a great host. And the speakers that were here earlier to share their experience on kind of like how AA works, and you're talking about unity and love and tolerance and harmonious action, and I was thinking about my first home group in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, where intolerance and hate was the code of the day, and if you didn't get your way in group membership, you blew up their car, and that's just the way it went. And I learned how to be a good member that way. And so it's been a hell of a road. Glad to be here and get to share. When I get to share, I'll be quite frank. A lot of folks ask me, are you nervous? And I'm not. I just hope I don't show up to do these talks. I've shared this from a million podiums. When Pete Marinelli shows up to do a talk, that guy wants applause, wants to be worshipped, wants everyone to ask me to sponsor them, and wants another commitment out of this talk. So I hope he doesn't show up. These talks are for fun and for free, and quite frankly, this is not work. All kidding aside, this is not work. I get to talk to you about what this power called God has done for me, what the sacred rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous have done for me, what sponsorship has done for me, and how I freely give it away. That is not work. The work, if there is any work here, it's about getting a wet drunk and bringing them from bridge to shore. Like getting a wet drunk and nursing them through the night and getting them to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If there is any work to do, it is that. And then when I look at Alcoholics Anonymous and all the blessings I've got, all the things I've gotten removed from me, compared to where I was 27 years ago at this time of year, there is no work in Alcoholics Anonymous. You need me to break down a group, you need me to do it all alone, you need me to make coffee for the next month or 6 months, you need me to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. It is really like kissing a newborn on the cheek compared to chasing a drink. What work? I get to do this for fun and for free. And the byproduct of that is I get another day above ground sucking air and sober. I get another day of freedom from active alcoholism, and not just a drink, but alcoholism. I'll break down the meeting, give it to me. Give me the key, I'll put it in the door and get the meeting going. What work? And that's what some of the things that were shown in Alcoholics Anonymous, a spirit of gratitude for what appears to be the most meaningless task. Because the alternative is me chasing. You said you'd be sleeping. I'd still be out drinking at this time. Or locked up. I mean, that's the way it is. So I get to do these things. Loving God separated me from alcohol June 23rd, 1988. I'm a recovered alcoholic, and I say that because I am. And anything less than that would be falsely humble. But it's just my truth. I don't say that to separate myself from anyone in this room or anyone in Alcoholics Anonymous, but it is the first promise in the big book, and I'm here to bear witness to that. No longer suffering from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body or the isms that accompany alcoholism, but a recovered alcoholic. And I'm not going to hide that for fear of not being popular. It's just the truth. And my job, God gave me a task this morning to share my experience and hope that He has given me. And so I need to shout God and shout the truth from the rooftops. There's no substitute for the truth. So I'm not going to hide it. I'd rather be accused of telling the truth than be accused of telling a lie. And that's what we have to do when we get to do when we go talk from a podium. That's why I don't want Pete Marinelli showing up, because he wouldn't do that. He just wants to make sure everyone likes him. Nice, warm and fuzzy hugs on the way out the door. And I'll pat myself on the back. And what we can quickly do, what I used to do, is I know God's will, but I like mine a little bit better. I know what God wants for me, but I have fallen in love with the illusion of who I'm supposed to be. And if I take what we call in AA these positive risks, leap of faith, which is really no such thing, but we term as, oh my God, I'm going to share the truth. Well, that's all I got. And at the end of the day, whether there's applause or not, I put my head on a pillow because I didn't harm anyone. And if we look at anyone we look up to in Alcoholics Anonymous, our heroes, and if we go outside of Alcoholics Anonymous and look at the enlightened folks that have walked the path, were never really popular. They flew in the face of the current state of affairs. And usually we kill people like that, huh? Yeah. But I'm grateful to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous where I can talk about my truth. June 23rd, 1988, God separated me from alcohol, and I was sharing this last night. That particular day, I was not looking to quit drinking. And that particular day, I would never have dreamed I would have landed where I am now. What a current practice of prayer meditation. Trying to stay away from this big thing that's reluctant to God called the mind. That's where reluctance, resistance, and fear and the 7 deadly sins have free room and board. Getting unhooked from this thinking mind, the predator. To have a life of prayer and meditation 3 times a day. To have nightly review, which means nightly review, which means nightly review. And accountable to a sponsor. And I sponsor a whole bunch of men. And living equally in all 3 sides of the triangle. Now that wasn't the plan, June 23rd, 1988, but that's where my Heavenly Father made me. Because quite frankly, I've been made clear on one thing. God got me sober June 23rd, 1988. I didn't get me sober. I got me drunk. I got myself arrested. I got myself in very awkward positions, really bad things. But God got me sober. And it wasn't to get a nice job. It wasn't to wear nice clothes. It wasn't to put money in my pocket. It was none of those things unless it was going to help me be an agent for Him. God got me sober for one reason. To go get the lost children and bring them back here. The sheep who are lost, they got to come home. We don't shoot the wounded, we nurse them back to health. That's the task put before me on June 23rd, 1988. I didn't wake up to that until much later. So we can fall in love with our will and our readiness. Our real readiness and willingness to change is not really readiness and willingness to change. We're still feeding the ego and starving the spirit, which means I'm in charge. Which I do that 12-step call as soon as the game's over. I'll call Vince to do the 12-step call because I have a wedding to go to. Or I have a date tonight. Those aren't the terms God gave me. So I need to be chiseled down till I stand before my Creator in the roar, if you will. And be in line with His will and not out of line. When I was growing up in Brooklyn, we had a term, hey kid, you're out of line. Which meant you're inappropriate. Which means you're going to get in trouble. You're out of line. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I have found the same language. I need to be in line through a surrender with God's will, because if I'm out of line with God's will, I'm going to get in trouble. If it isn't with other members in Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't care how loving and talented they are towards me, they're not going to invite me into their circle. And I'm going to get in trouble, so much trouble that a drink is going to look good because I'm going to get thirsty. I'm going to get in trouble where freedom is lost. And the same way I went forwards through the steps, I begin to go backwards through the steps, and I'll start feeding the ego and starving the spirit. The reality for me has been that this journey through the 12 steps has been a forward journey backwards. I go through the steps numerically 1 through 12, live in 10, 11, and 12, and back through 1 to 9. Experience the death of self for successful living, access power, and be an effective agent for God. What I'm actually doing, what we actually are doing, are going home. It's a forward journey backwards home to purity, honesty, unselfishness, and love. What God created in the first place. In my brokenness. The other realization I've had for years now is that those of us who truly understand that we are broken, that we really do have defective character. Those are the enlightened members of Alcoholics Anonymous. To deny that means my ego is still breathing. I used to have defects. I used to be broken. No, I leak. Like the engine that drips oil, that's me. And I can go to God and tell Him, fix the leaky engines, and say, no. You're fine just the way you are because you keep returning to me to get repaired. That's the relationship God wants. That through the brokenness, I turn back to the only power there is that I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that is God, which I found in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I saw it demonstrated in front of my eyes by you. God knew how to get a guy who was full of contempt, suspicion, and doubt like me. He showed me you and gave me the instructions to get to you. It wasn't a figure it out on your own. So you have bear witness for me for almost 27 years. That's my job. I do not know who's new in this room today, or tomorrow, or last night, or a month from now. And I don't know who's in Alcoholics Anonymous, perhaps with 20 or 30 years, who's dying on the inside, because we will die from 1,000 cuts, not the one drink or the one shot to the head. We will die, we will bleed out in Alcoholics Anonymous. And sometimes we overlook it because Joe and Mary have 25, 30 years respectively. What does that mean? It's just a number. I know guys in jail who are doing 30 years, haven't had a drink in 30 years. I don't want them to sponsor me. More coffee in the back row. They're a little slow on the truck. I know it's 11 o'clock in the morning, but come on. Let's June 23rd, 1988. I'm homeless this time of year, May, early June. I'm running through the streets of New York with 6 treatment centers under my belt. I went to AA meetings, got drunk on the way home. In my first 6 treatment centers, over a whole bunch of years, going into my first treatment center, I'll say around 19-ish. Where I had to concede it to my innermost self. I went to my first treatment centers and got in trouble. But I'm 6 treatment centers. Before my 7th and last treatment center, I managed on my own power 2 days of continuous sobriety. 2 days. I was in my 5th treatment center for 9 weeks, discharged on a Saturday and drunk on Monday. And that's all I can come up with over 6 treatment centers before 1988 showed up, June of '88. On my own power, that was the best I can do, and I remember it like it was yesterday because I had what you guys talked about, that white knuckle sobriety. I was crawling out of my skin. And Monday morning, I went to the liquor store in downtown Brooklyn, and I waited for him, my liquor store, by the way, for him to open up. He rolled up the fence, my hand was on the counter before he got in there. Pint of Mr. Boston Blackberry Brandy. I was separated for 9 weeks from alcohol. I was eating a ton of pills back then too. I had nothing in me, 9 weeks. Physically, I looked pretty good, if you saw me. I presented as someone who looked like they're pretty healthy. And I cracked the seal, and the Blackberry Brandy went down as if I was dying of thirst, and I had been on a desert for a month. I could not get it down fast enough. My body was not experiencing craving after 9 weeks, but my mind, the alcoholic mind, was in a state of obsession and convinced my body that you need a drink, Pete, and I did. I remember the anxiety of having the thing in my hand. There was nothing to be anxious about. When I drank that particular Monday, I remember as it went down, I felt I was back in my skin. I can feel I was alive, I was in control. Now I can do life. That's why I can't do life on life's terms. I still can't. I don't offer that to anyone. It could be a death sentence. Life on God's terms is different. And God kept showing me how on my will I fail. I can't do life. I need a drink to do life, and I couldn't even do that right. So this time of year, 1988, I'm homeless, living in an abandoned building. I'm wearing this brown turtleneck, a black zipper-up jacket. I have these work pants that are blood-stained in soil. I have a construction boots that I'm wearing. The right shoe had no front. I hadn't bathed. I hadn't eaten. I don't know how long. I weighed a good solid 130 pounds. I'm about 195, 198 now, so you can imagine what I look like. I was urinating blood, my gums were bleeding, I was filthy, I reeked, and I knew it. But June 23rd wasn't a day where it's okay, I'm going to go to my 7th treatment center, I'm going to learn about the big book and become a circuit speaker and sponsor people. I'm going to be joyous, happy, and free. And I love God. It was another day of torment. And at this point in my life, and I don't say this to My story is worse than yours. I despised God. I don't know if I was an atheist, because I still had this being that I hated. I didn't deny it. I despised God. And I looked over my life on the terrible deck of cards this God gave me, including ripping me off of a mom and turning me into a bum, an alcoholic bum. This God is just cruel. I wanted no part of it. That was up until June 22nd, 1988. But June 23rd, 1988, I didn't quit. But when I came to in the back of a hallway, Bill says the courage to do battle was not there. The courage to do battle was not there. God removed that. We get rescued. We get rescued. I didn't have it in me to say, take stock of myself in this condition, say, you got any rehabs I can go to? Can you take me to me? That was off the map. Here was my plea in June of 88. Father, take me from this. I don't want to die. Period. The same God I had cursed and mocked for so long was the very same God that I turned back to have. I was asking for mercy. I don't want to die. And if anyone has been in a position where a gun's put to your head and you think you're about to die, you stop begging and ask for mercy. And that's exactly where God brought me to, because he knew how to get my attention. My God, our God, is always pursuing, never eluding us, and will do whatever he has to do to get our attention. My mind wants to interpret that as God is being cruel to me and taking things from me. And all he's doing is removing the sharp object from my hand to get closer. Not that proximity actually exists with us and God, but there's a spirit of being distant from God. And that's what happened June of 88. And I came to, out of this bitter morass of self-pity, this place I was in. And I was struck with a moment of clarity or truth or wholeness of mind or God. To me, those words are all interchangeable. My ego shut down for a brief moment. And I was completely out of my mind on June 23rd, 1988 for about 10 minutes. I always thought when people says, hey, you're out of your mind, it was a bad thing. Trust me, guys, if we all were out of our mind, we'd be joyous, happy, and free. You ever hear folks say, I'm going to go down to that store and give that store owner a piece of my mind? My suggestion is don't give him a piece, give him the whole thing. And why I say I'm out of my mind? Because I got some clarity, I got some truth. I was unhooked from me. That was grace. That was a given. We find in Alcoholics Anonymous, we have to work at staying unhooked from ourselves. And those are the 12 spiritual principles. Cleaning up amends especially, getting into 10-11 and giving the whole thing away. Something happens where we get our soul food. If we want to experience spiritual starvation, don't help anyone. If we want to get our soul food, help everyone. Servant is as high as I can go on the AA ladder. Be a servant. This day, June 23rd, 1988, I was struck with truth. It was grace. In Alcoholics Anonymous, I get to experience the power that gives me grace. A big difference. I wasn't thinking about AA or any of the other things I get to do nowadays. I just didn't want to die. And my Heavenly Father built a bridge for me to cross over. In fact, like footprints, carried me over. My job today is to be a builder of bridges. Not everyone in AA, believe it or not everyone likes me in AA. I know it's hard to believe. So be it. I will still build a bridge for you. I'll even carry you over. And that anyone who knows me closely knows that those are true words. But that doesn't come from me, that comes from him. June 23rd, 1988, I'm in the hallway and I beg, please take me from this. I don't want to die. And the next thing I get is to call my dad. And I went to call my dad collect on the phone, and I had these crying jags, and I stopped doing that. My dad had this intuitive thought. He was in Atlantic City with his wife, having some fun down there. He leaves Atlantic City to go find me, because during that time, as I'm trying to reach out to him, my dad has this feeling, as he described in his gut, that his son was in trouble. I have to go look for Peter. She thought a lunacy commission should be appointed for him, because it had been a while since we spoke. I was completely detached from my family, not willingly. They said, you're not part of this family anymore, you're killing us. You have become, my dad said to me one day, you have become a cancer. and I have to protect your younger brothers from you. I can't even fathom what that's like for a parent to tell his firstborn, you can't come here anymore. How arrogant have I been perhaps over the years in thinking my dad did a poor job when I was growing up? He didn't do a great job. How arrogant to come into Alcoholics Anonymous and say, you set the room up wrong, I'm going to another meeting, I don't like this. When I've ripped this illness that had me have ripped hearts out and then stepped on them and walk away with an attitude. And come into Alcoholics Anonymous and say, you feed me because I'm here. But the only guy I can think of that God gave me was called my own man. My dad had his intuitive thought, makes his way back from Atlantic City to Brooklyn. I was in Brooklyn this particular day. I wasn't in Manhattan. Why? I don't know. I don't recall, but there I was in Brooklyn. He went from Atlantic City to Brooklyn. It's a good 3-4 hour drive at least. And he finds me. Which, the odds of this happening are slim and none. And he drove right where those doors are. I'm standing here, and he drove up in his car, and he got out of the car and he called my name. He didn't scream at me. He didn't bark at me. He just said, Peter, kind of like a parent who can't find their kid, and there they are. And what did I do in that little brief moment? I yelled back, Dad, I'm okay. Don't worry, I'm fine. My dad wasn't hearing it. He walked across the street, and I collapsed. I slumped in his arms. I remember this. I couldn't even stand anymore. It was truly over. I ran out of road. I knew it that early in the day, but this was the final. This was the stop sign, and it showed up because I collapsed. And my dad was holding me up and kept saying over and over and over like a mantra. He kept saying this. I couldn't believe it. I'm not going to lose my son to this. Over and over and over. And I remember hearing this and realized, who's he talking to? We know who he was talking to. Even if he was angry with the boss, he was still having a dialogue with this power called God. Our roots grasp new soil in the worst moment in both our lives. This is what God does. Our relationship changed forever. While his oldest son is dying and my dad is questioning his fathering skills, his manhood, everything was turned completely upside down, which is a necessary ingredient for folks like us to get well. We have to be ripped out, root and branch, and put in a new lot, in new soil, with a new gardener. That's called God, not me, not the relationship, not my money, nothing on the external world. The external world is a liability to me and my spiritual fitness. It is not a remedy. And God will say, you know what? I'm going to do it for you and just remove us from where we think we're supposed to be. My life is none of my business. That was part of the decision in step 3. I'm here to report to you that my sober life, if you will, is also none of my business. God allows me to participate in both as if it is. It's none of my business. I'm a soldier. We're spiritual warriors. We line up. God says, you go here, you go there, you go there. That's your task for the day. And I will supply you with everything you need to go do the 12-step call, to go do the detox, to go hear a 5th step, to go give a talk. This is easy. Go to a detox on a Sunday morning. On a Thorazine shuffle. Everyone's on doing a Thorazine shuffle. You're taking your Sunday morning out to talk to no one. I really identify with what you said, man. You didn't even hear me, you know. All the junkies in the back went, oh, he's like us too, man. That's a joke back there. I don't want to call it. He's making a phone call. Off I went to my 7 treatment center. And what I did after 10 days, romancing another drink. I'm walking around treatment, 10 days, detoxing, horrible detox, coming off the pills and the booze. And the dry goods were way behind me now. Hep C, They were taking me for all these tests on my liver and some other internal stuff. I was still bleeding, and they were really concerned about me. And I was cold all the time. It's June, so the air conditioners are going at this hospital. And I used to go into the washer and dryer room and turn on the dryer, put a blanket around me, and just rock against the dryer. And I really thought there was something seriously wrong with me. And thank the good Lord, the way they treated people like us in treatment back then was a little different from what they do now. They didn't medicate me, because I was presenting as someone who's depressed or anxiety. I'm in the business not to medicate you for anything. They didn't do that. They just nursed me back to health. And they knew when to coddle me and when to ignore me. But after 10 days of doing this, I can't do this. I can't even do detox anymore. I need to get a drink, and I was getting thirsty. And I wanted an AMA again. After all of this, my mind is going to pretty up a junkyard. It would always tell me what the drink is going to do for me, not to me. It wasn't going to tell me, hey, you're going to get a good drunk on and then be homeless in a week. It didn't tell me that part. It says, a nice drunk, it's going to be good. You're going to be the only Dauphine never to get sick. Don't worry about it. I spoke to a counselor. She says, what's wrong? I says, I want to get drunk. I never did this before. I want to get drunk. She pulled me into the office, she gave me an apple juice. And we just talked. And she took off her clinician hat and talked to me. I got through that. I get discharged, and they're talking about sending me to Minnesota. And I was sharing last night, what do I know from Minnesota? I knew 5 blocks in my neighborhood. That was it. That was the world to me. And I'm on my way up to this office. I have about 2 days before I go to Minnesota, a day and a half. And this gentleman, Vince Dowling from Manhattan, was sitting in the office. This guy looked exactly like Dr. Bob. I liked it because he was dressed impeccable. I was impressed by men dressed nice. And I walked into the office dressed impeccable. And he had one of these summer straw hats. Beautiful watch. Just looked dressed to the nines. And I was still thinking, this guy's not like me, though. This guy's some big shot office guy. He turned to me and he says, my name is Vince, I'm an alcoholic, I haven't had a drink in 30 years. He got my attention. And in 10 minutes, he gave me his Reader's Digest version of his story, how he had been homeless. He was a very promising actor. Hung out with what we call the Irish Rat Pack. He was up and coming. Broadway, dancer, singer, all of this stuff, and drinking blew it up. And he was homeless, to eat out of dumpsters, sleep in abandoned buildings. And on his word, because one drunk reached out to this drunk, I go to Minnesota. And I went there because I knew Vince was in New York, and if I run into a problem, I can call Vince. The power that God gives us, one drunk working with another. Because we intimately know each other, even though none of us know each other. As soon as I walk into a room, I don't know practically anyone in this room. But if I go up to a stranger, I'm an alcoholic, you say you're an alcoholic, we know I got your rhythm, you got mine. Whether it's sober 1 year or 30 years, we get it. Fear-based, insecure, ego the size of Texas. We just want to do right, and we can't. We don't know how. I get it. And so off I went to Minnesota. And almost a year later, I was brought home and brought to the my first home group, where, as I said earlier, intolerance and hate was the love of the day, the word of the day. But I found my first teacher there, my first real sponsor. No one liked him in the neighborhood. You know why? Because he walked with this book. No one liked him in the neighborhood because he would lovingly confront you if you contradicted what was in this book. I went up to him one day and says, hey, there's some inventories, 4-step inventories. There's one from Texas, there's one from here, there's one from here. I'll clean up the language. But he cursed me out, dropped a few F-bombs, and says, one inventory, it's in this book. I went to him one time, he says, Tony, I hear people saying all the time, I don't know how it works, but I know it does. He said, Schmuck, go to chapter 5. This is how it works. And there were a lot of mistakes. Tons of mistakes I made, as I do now. I'm broken. I surrender my brokenness to my God every morning. I thank my God for allowing me still to be an agent at that night, even with my brokenness. I work with a little religious practice during the day, and God has made me into this guy who prays and meditates 3 times a day. But the greatest thing I can give my God is my sin or my defects and my brokenness. And begging to allow me to line myself with his will. Chisel me down. You speak to a mystic at the end of this journey, or when we reach what we'll call enlightenment, there's actually less of that person on the back end than on the front end. There should be nothing left of me at some point. Nothing left of me. And when that day happens, I will truly experience the sunlight of the Spirit. We talk about being the sunlight of the Spirit. We know what that, experientially we can talk about it. But it's even a greater place when there's nothing left of us. When the self has been truly grinded into dust, and perhaps maybe the ego has shut down for a little while. Because even when I'm trying to be kind, I'm still a self-seeker. Huh? Anyone identify with that? I want you to think I'm Moses right now because I gave you my chair. You know, take my chair, I'll get you coffee. And they walk away going, wow, that guy's really spiritual. That was the motive the whole time. An alcoholic with a motive, we should be considered armed and dangerous, first of all. And I get to stand before you this morning with some integrity. You be the judge of how much. And hopefully an upstanding member of the sacred fellowship. But that wasn't the plan in June of 1988. I just don't want to die. What God said to me that day, I was talking about being out of my mind. I'll never forget this, as if it happened an hour ago. It was the thunder of silence, that whisper, that intuitive voice that you hear. Too many times I hear folks say, oh, if you're hearing God, there's something really wrong with you. God's got to talk to somebody. Yeah. We say God works through people. How do we know he's working through that person? Because they have a relationship with God. Except I don't need to be a spiritual guru for that to happen. God will come in and get us at the 11th hour when we're completely broken. My spiritual awakening certainly happened as a result of this work. And when I sat down, it was made teachable to go through the work with the sponsor. But the catalyst, the pilot light got turned on June 23rd, 1988, when I begged for help. It was the shift in consciousness where I don't work, he better. I need help. I'm dying and I don't want to die. The pilot light, as my friend says, gets turned on. We're no longer the same anymore. It is the flimsy reed that proves over and over and over again to be the powerful and loving hand of our Creator, and nothing less than that great fact. The central fact of my life is my God gave me a job. My God puts money in my pocket. He's going to determine how much. And I complain to him a lot of times that it's not enough. That's my will. How much money do we need? How much money do I need? Just enough not to need him. That's what it comes down to. How much stuff do we need? Just enough not to need him. I get split wide open on this particular day. But I was given grace. And only in our brokenness, can light shine in. June 22nd and every year before that I was in lockdown. You don't get in, nothing gets out. You don't get in, nothing gets out. I hate everyone, I hate God, I'm a man's man. Until we get broken. And we touch our brokenness. Now that doesn't feel good, but that is the beginning of the spiritual transformation that every one of us need to experience. And we can experience that while we're in meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and we break down again because of unspiritual behavior, that the mind makes it appropriate and spiritual, and we run our road with that. The sex spree, the food spree, the money spree, the fear spree, and the addiction that we all suffer from, the thinking spree. We're always thinking all the time. When an alcoholic, I asked them a question, they said, let me think about it, I'll get back to you. I leave the state. In that moment, by the way, I got to share this. I hear this voice, enough, I have other work for you to do. It's like someone leaned over and says, enough, I have other work for you to do. It wasn't this voice, though. It was his voice. And as I said earlier, I said, I lost my mind, I'm hearing voices. This is what they told me was going to happen. I was really out of my mind. It's the only place I learned when the pilot light got turned on that can experience God. When I'm out of my mind, I cannot intellectualize, I cannot conceptualize this God. I have to be unhooked from the mind and into spirit. And God will demonstrate through me what he can do. God will talk to us. God will speak to the heart, not to the mind. I'd rather live my life by my heart rather than my mind. And in my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's a constant pruning of the tree to bear good fruit. To be a power of example, to bear witness to the drunk who's full of contempt and suspicion and doubt about this sacred fellowship and me. So God keeps removing over and over and over, and the road gets very, very narrow, and the gate is going to be really small, but I cannot waver and get pushed around like the ocean gets blown around by the wind. That's not going to do. That's half measures, and I will get drunk and others will get sick. I need to be all in. June 23rd, 1980, that happened for me. I have not wavered. Thank the good Lord. And I get to practice fidelity to my God, not infidelity to my God. I don't have gods before my God. I get to practice fidelity in my relationships. I don't have relationships along with the relationship I have a commitment with. Everyone just got uncomfortable in the same background. Guys, that is not on me. That's not my power. I'm a liar, cheat, and a thief, even when the truth works. But God reworks us. It's a do-over. 14 years old, I'm hanging out on the corner, and I'm full of me. I'm full of fear, doubt, skepticism. I was born to the wrong family. Guys are just courageous. I'm not. I watched the gangsters. I was a little jock and a very gifted musician growing up. I loved the hippies. I loved the Cream back in the day and the Rolling Stones. I just loved all of it. I wanted to be one of those guys. But as I hit 14 and 15, I noticed the gangsters. And they were very appealing to me. They were in control. They feared no one. I wanted to be like that. Shift in perceptions for sure. I couldn't even tie my own shoelaces without my dad helping me out. But I had these delusions of grandeur. But I was so afraid. The great thing about Alcoholics Anonymous, I can tell you I'm afraid. I can tell you I got pain that hurts. And if that's really going on, you will listen. In fact, this is the only place that I know of on the planet. I can tell you the most god-awful, terrible, insane, horrific things I've done, and you say, here's my number, give me a call. I mean, About 6 months prior to my first drunk, my mom committed suicide. January 23rd, 1974. And I woke up to terror that morning. She should have been in the rooms with us if I was writing the script. She was alcoholic, addicted to Valium, the same place I left off. And she tried a few times to do this. And my dad kept getting her in time. In and out of psych places, in and out of, you name it, she went to. One night, my dad fell asleep on the couch because he used to stay up with her all night because if she could get her hands on pills, she'd eat them. And he fell asleep on the couch and didn't wake up, and she had the opportunity to hold a bunch of Valium and never woke up. And my design for living was removed. I got a guy at home. I called him Dad. He's cunning, baffling, and powerful. Makes Tony Soprano look like Tinkerbell. Tough guy. Legitimate. Not because he's my old man. He's a tough guy. How do I grow up around this? You know, this giant. I mean, he was a giant. Wherever I went, they knew my dad. His reputation was impeccable. How do I do this? Mom's gone. I'm afraid of this man. I'm a loser. I know it on the inside. No matter what I accomplish, it's never enough until one spring, summer night, the older guys are drinking Colt 45 beer. They egged me on. I took a few pops. Nothing happened. Beer, sudsy, it's cold. I mean, what's the big deal? Did it again, hit it again, hit it again. Bang. I was electrified. I fell in love. The fear of my dad, the pain of my mom, the insecurity that was driving me, the feeling of I'm just kind of hanging to the next day. I'm going through the motions in this thing called life, and I'm only 14, was removed. I was in touch. I got taller and better looking. The girls got attractive. I was attractive to them. I could be a gangster now. I could be Mickey Mantle. I settled for Al Pacino by midnight. I never forget my first drunk. It was euphoric. It was a spiritual experience. I was alive. Now I know why people drink. I didn't know I was about to step on, I just stepped onto the road paved to hell called alcoholism. I can't stop now. And when I'm not using it, I'm thinking about using it. That's it. I opened up Pandora's box. Right to hell, it's over. I didn't know that then. I just knew at the end of the night, my friends had to get home, and I remember feeling like panicky. You can't put the lid on this. This is good. We're going to drink forever. Don't go home. And I waited for the following Saturday. I had a panacea for my ills. I think about this, guys. I'm 14, and they're not like, I wasn't 14 like 14-year-olds are today. 14. That I needed to get drunk to deal with the week ahead of me. At 14, if a 14-year-old came up to me and says, my life is in so much pain, I am in so much pain, I'm thinking about dying already, I need a drink to get through the week, I'm going to place them in some facility now because they're in trouble. I think about, back then you didn't tell anyone. There was no therapy. You don't tell anyone anything. Between ages 8 and 10, I was sexually abused. You don't tell anyone, you just don't. I'm going through puberty, questioning my own sexuality because this man did these things to me, thinking there's something wrong with me. I was 8, there was nothing wrong with me. But you don't tell anyone. We're great at keeping stuff in and fronting. Then we find drinking, all that went away. I was already shot, I was bleeding to death. And the drink shut it down temporarily. That's why I returned to it. The problem is I couldn't pick and choose when to drink. It picked and chose me. We drink, okay? And then I start to beg, borrow, and steal to keep the drunk going. First treatment center, second treatment center, third, fourth, fifth treatment center. Even to the point where I conceded to my innermost self, I'm an alcoholic and I'm going to die from this stuff. My mind says, yeah, but you need one more drink. Yes. You know, we're the only folks who go have a drink to figure out how to quit drinking. I've heard it from a million guys go down to the bar. They go to the bar with a big book and say, I'm an alcoholic. Here's my big book. Give me a double. I walked into my first treatment center because I got caught stealing from my dad. I was in a place of readiness to change. God wasn't everything. I was everything. My life was everything. God was not even on the horizon. God was nothing. I needed to do that 180, but it took years of getting beat down to run out of road where I became teachable. And I saw people in treatment talking about treatment centers, plural, that they had been in, and in other institutions. And I had to get out of there. I wasn't an alcoholic. I went to treatment because my dad placed me in there because I was stealing from him to get drunk. He was trying to kind of nip it in the bud, getting away of my first step, getting away of my bottom, which we can do in AA too. One of the most difficult things I found is, Joe, go get drunk. That's a tough one. 28 days later, I had a young lady meet me at the doors. Honey, I'm coming home. Like I did a bit of Rikers Island or something. I'm coming home. Bring a jug. I have to go to AA meetings. I cracked the seal. Booze went down. Craving was on. The obsession never left. Spiritual malady in full bloom. Second treatment center. And so on and so forth. My fifth treatment center, 9 weeks right before I got in there, and shortly after I got out, my dad supplied me with the little studio apartment in Brooklyn, furnished it for me, clothes, got me clothes, nice little garment bag, shoes and boxes. I was a longshoreman for years, a dock worker in the Camelot era, where you could not get fired from this job. You cannot get fired from this job. You cannot get fired from this job. I got fired. They said, you're fired, don't come back. And my dad says, if you behave, he didn't understand alcoholism. If you behave, we'll see about getting your job back. And I brought the Bowery into this little studio. The bed was soiled and bloodstained. It looked like a crack house. It looked like a Bowery mission. I'm not exaggerating. There was laundry all over the floor. I wasn't bathing or ready. There were blackberry brandy bottles broken all over. I had some other things I was taking. The leftovers of that and all that whole paraphernalia thing. It was a mess. I wasn't paying rent, almost burned the joint down, and the landlord tried to beat me up one day. Call the cops on me. And in my alcoholic mind, I said, what is his problem? He's not a good guy. He's a mean guy. He's being cruel to me. I'm not bothering anyone. I'm not paying rent. I'm bringing all sorts of unsavory characters around at all hours of the night. They're banging on a door. They're screaming for money. I mean, it was a mess. And I had a problem with the landlord, who lived directly upstairs with a wife, his little daughter. His wife was pregnant. He was working and going to school. I have a problem with this. When I got thrown out of there, I was on the streets. And guys, I'm not a tough guy. One night on the street, I was petrified. I was out there a little longer. I was just petrified. I knew something, I walked with impending doom. I knew something bad was going to happen to me at any minute. Nowadays, if I'm walking down the block, I walk on the sidewalk, like most of us. I walked in the street. I was so full of paranoia that someone was going to jump out from a driveway behind a parked car and get me. So I'm safer walking in the street. I used to wander through. How I didn't get hit by a car or truck is only God's grace. I landed in some flea bag motel in Staten Island one day. Stood there with this young lady. Why she took me in, I don't know. And it was my first attempt at taking my life the same way my mom checked out. A bunch of Valium and washed them down with Jack Daniels. And God interrupted that death for me. I remember as the Valium was kicking in and the booze, and you're kind of drifting away. I had this feeling of, I wouldn't say euphoria, but there was something wonderful about the fact that I wasn't going to wake up anymore. It's over. I'm 26 about. I think of a 26-year-old who had a bunch of treatment centers under the belt, that tried Alcoholics Anonymous, and just wants to die. I didn't suffer from clinical depression. I still don't. I wasn't bipolar. I didn't have any psych issues other than my grave emotional mental disorder, which means I'm alcoholic. And for people like us, dying appears to be a good way to go at any given day. If I'm not working out in the spiritual gym, regardless of how long we're sober. I'm going to be 27 soon. Happy anniversary, Bonnie. If I'm not spiritually fit, I'm capable of doing anything as soon as this meeting's over. And this talk was just a talk. So I work out in the spiritual gym, as I call it. And all it means is I have to hit the mat, bow to my God, ask him for mercy, for courage, strength, and direction to do what you have before me. He'll keep me sober. And follow some strict spiritual disciplines in the steps of 10 and 11, which means I'm accountable to a sponsor. A sponsor, not 45 different people. I'm accountable to the men I sponsor. And sometimes it is an inconvenience. Let's be honest. You know, you're about to fall asleep and he calls up. He just broke up with the girlfriend. I want a drink. I'm not going to say I can't talk. Call me in the morning. I'm going to talk to them. We're going to pray on the phone. But we do all those things. I get to do all this because it's a get to in AA. We come around because we got to. After all, we get to. I get to have a sponsor. I get to call a sponsor. I get to sponsor men. I get to work with men. I get to go to work. I get to come here to get to. Because the alternative is a beautiful day that everyone's been talking about like this. I'm coming out of some after hours. Or going to get released from another jail cell. Or panhandling somewhere. And it goes on and on and on. It's not like that anymore. My God took me to the edge of a cliff where the nails were dug in, and I looked how far up I was. I don't want to fall. Help. And he sent me you. Growing up where I grew up, you don't need anyone. A real man needs no one. And don't depend or rely on anyone. The only thing I was told to trust is the money in your pocket. I come into AA and I find God sending you all of me, and I need and depend on you. What a flip. And I'm so grateful for that. We're intimately connected. If I was in some stuff going on, I can grab someone who's from and say, you got 5 minutes for me? You're going to say yes. I will talk to you and you will know exactly what's going on with me. You've either been there or currently there. And we're going to point to the same solution at the end of the day. There'll be some different methodology, but it's all about driving the drunk back to the boss. In that place of that experiencing God, in that a present moment awareness where there is no mind, there is no problems. Lack of power is my dilemma. So I need power to have no dilemma. Why do we balk at going? A good friend of mine says, how it works is rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. In reality, he says, it looks like this. Rarely have we seen a person follow our path. I can be the biggest hypocrite in AA. I love God, I worship God, I want to do God, and you give me some inventories, I'm getting another sponsor. When I ran out of road in June of '88, God made me very teachable to the point where I'm still going to any lengths. I need 6 of me to keep up, quite frankly. I do this about 25, 30 weekends a year. I sponsor men. I work a full-time job in a treatment center. I nourish and cherish my relationship with this woman. I have a relationship with my family. Thank the good Lord. My middle brother is sick. He's got Parkinson's, and I'm able to be there for him as much as I can. The things we get to do in Alcoholics Anonymous when we leave the meeting is pack into the stream of life. And I don't need an applause to do it. It's just what we do. It's what we do. The thing we were always looking to do way back when, I just want to be a part of. I want to fit in. Where's my little crevice to get in there? We got it. For years, as I said, I despise my God. I come into Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's not like that anymore. And little by little, I returned to my religion. But I took a lot of avenues like some of us do, and I still use some of those other philosophies in my life. They're wonderful. I was going through the work it's over 2 years ago. I was doing a new inventory with the sponsor, my current sponsor, Mickey from Colorado. And I came to institutions, and I wrote some inventory on, I'm a Catholic, on the Catholic Church, on some of my contempts though. Some of the hypocrisy that I witnessed and things you read in the paper. And he reminded me quickly of resentment's the #1 offender, how long you've been walking around with this one for. And then he presented me as an enlightened, awake teacher, sponsor will do. He said, let me ask you a question, Peter. Because you love God? I said, of course. We pray to the same God, he and I. And he said, but you go to AA meetings? I said, yeah. He says, is every AA meeting a healthy meeting? I says, no. You got 13 steppers in there? I says, yeah. They follow formats, they break rules. They follow formats, they break rules. Yeah. But you keep going back with all the brokenness in your meetings and trying to bring a solution and practicing love and tolerance for those who are breaking rules. How come you can't do that with your church? And the worst thing one of us want is no answer to come back with. I had nothing. No comeback. He hit me with truth. And there's a great phrase, the truth is true until we find out it no longer isn't. There I was. My old truths died right in his one statement, as a great sponsor will do. And we talk some more and realize I owe an amends, don't I? Because if you and I got into a conversation, I'm a Catholic, I love the carpenter, but some of the things in church, I mean, they got some, whoa, when did gossip be okay? So my assignment in step 9 was to go to sit with the priest, and what we had there is confession. I walked in and I said, Father, I need to talk to a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and if you have a moment, I need to make an amends. He did no preaching and ranting. He gave me absolution, and I says, Father, what can I do to make this right? He didn't say, go to everyone you've talked bad about, make it right. He says, can you do one thing? Can you come to Mass tomorrow? That was it. I said, okay. I took my girlfriend Marion because I was afraid to walk into church. She's a big churchgoer. We walk in. As soon as the bells went off, the tears started. I sat in the very back row. And I stayed for the hour. They do the Lord's Prayer like we do in here. I was crying. On the way home, I was euphoric. I called my sponsor, says, Mick, I'm home. I can't even explain what just happened to me. I start going every week. What has God has done for me now? I serve communion and I read from Scripture. Eucharistic minister and elector at my church. And if I'm not on the road, the most favorite place for me to be at 10:30 in the morning is standing on the altar and worshiping my God a little bit different than we do here. How many of us have returned to our religions and said, thank you, go to your God's house and say thanks? It would be like me coming to me, you seeing me every day on the street, knowing I'm hungry and bringing me food every day for years. 3 meals a day you cook for me. You put money in my pocket. You give me clothes to wear. You even gave me a job. Every day for years you do this without question. And then one particular day you say, hey, listen, can you come by? We're having a little party at my house. I would love to have you. I say, oh, I'm too busy. Ouch. But we can quickly sit on our spiritual thrones in AA and claim we're spiritual with our lips and yet point fingers at many. How spiritual am I? How clean am I? It was a wake-up call for me. I've never been freer than in the last few years, in all the years I've been in AA, because I do that along with AA, never instead of. And my God has pruned me down some more. I'm grateful to be here. That's all I got. Peace.